friends, fellow Source players. I hope you are having a great weekend. Okay, so I had a really good night's sleep. I was able to get in the silence today. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty pumped, and I want to talk. Okay, so I want to talk about this idea of accomplishment, of achieving, of deservedness, meritocracy, but also shame, regret, guilt, resentment, and unforgiveness. We're going to get into all this because this is all wrapped up in a big way. Okay, so here in the land of opportunity, we have been raised to believe in this idea of meritocracy. What is that? It is the idea that if you go to school and you get good grades and you join the right clubs and you get into the right athletics, you will be an ideal candidate for the right colleges or universities to pick you. You're going to get all the right things. You're going to do all the right things. You're going to take your SATs. You're going to apply for all these schools because your GPA is this, and you have proven that you are able to achieve. And then you get into that university, and then you maybe you've decided I'm going to pursue law. So now you're going to have to go to law school, and then you're going to have to pass the bar, and then you're going to pursue law, right? Or maybe you decided to be in the medical field, and I'm going to go to medical school, and then I got to do my residency, and you're going to go down this path all these years to become a doctor, which are very expensive educations. Now, listen, I'm not poo-pooing on education in any way, shape, or form. If you have had people that have paid for your education, or if you've gotten full financial aid, or you paid for your education, whatever the case may be, and you were able to go and achieve that, bravo, honestly, okay? Or you learned a skill or whatever, there is something to be said for that. I know for myself at the time, when I graduated high school, my mother found out that Mercy College was offering an annex program in my high school. She got me full financial aid, and I went, and I couldn't handle it. I didn't know what I was doing. Even though I tested well and placed in certain classes, I couldn't keep up because I didn't know what was going on. I was falling asleep a lot in class. I wasn't paying attention. Because outside of school, I was, drinking, I was smoking weed, I was hanging out with people that I shouldn't have been hanging out with, that were just, losers. And that was my life. And I was so emotionally immature. I was in full-blown, PTSD trauma mode of my childhood, in full dysregulation for so many years. High school, my teenage years were the worst. Okay, so I couldn't handle it, and even if I had stuck through it, it was squandering it no matter what, because I was ill prepared. I wasn't prepared. And when I really look at it, my mother was pushing me to do this because my mother wanted the freedom. It wasn't because she wanted me to have a better life. My mother wanted the better life. Okay, she was like, if I just push this kid to go to school and she does something with herself, I can be free of her. Okay, I have to make her do something so I can be free. And I get that. I totally get that sentiment. My mother was tired. My mother was broken and just beat down. She wanted from life, and she wanted to go live peacefully in New England in retirement. It just didn't work out that way, okay? Because I couldn't live up to that expectation. It wasn't within me at that particular point. So all of her disappointment was put on me, with regret and shame and guilt and etc. So I lived with all that shame and guilt and resentment of never getting my higher education since I was 18, right? And that's a long time to live with that. I'm 52. So you do the math. Okay, it's 35 years or something like that? I don't know. I could be off. I'm just throwing it out there. So anyway, it's not to say there's anything wrong with it, but in this country, higher education is astronomical. So at this point in the game, anybody who is gonna, anchor themselves down, weigh themselves down with massive, massive debt to get an education, look, I give it up to you, okay? And there are people still paying off their college loans, their student loans for decades. So anyway, that in itself is the whole thing. So I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And this idea of failure and letting my mother down and being filled with regret of not, and feeling like less than because I couldn't do it. When I know I have the mental capacity to do it. I know I do. I just didn't have the emotional maturity. I couldn't do it at that time, right? I can learn what I want to learn, even though it might be sometimes a struggle for me. Like I've tried to learn other things and I've been able to do it in certain cases. In some cases it's struggled, and sometimes it's a struggle bus that I'm riding and I gotta, take a lot to learn it, but I'll get it, and I know I will. I know if I'm determined to do something, I know I will. So anyway, this idea of meritocracy, that if you follow that life trajectory, you will be rewarded with all of the things that you have earned. But that's the lie. Meritocracy is the lie. This idea that we are living in the land. We are essentially living in the land of opportunity. Yes, sure. But even to be an entrepreneur, you have to know what the heck you're doing. It's one thing to be an entrepreneur, but if you can't execute, if you can't fund it, all these things mean nothing. If you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you have to know what you're doing. Anybody could start a business, but does it mean that business is really gonna boom? Who knows? But this idea of meritocracy is a myth, because we live in this society where we see people that have done things that they've achieved things, they've been given things that they don't necessarily deserve, or they haven't necessarily earned in our eyes. And I know for a fact when I think about different things that I've gotten sucked into over the last few years, like the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, and like Amber Heard is just this beautiful woman who squandered all of the opportunity she was allowed access to because of her beauty, her sheer beauty. But she's an NPC. You know what I'm saying? Like we know that these are NPCs, these are entities playing out. The same thing with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. If you don't know what's going on there, just Google it, right? Another beautiful woman who is just, so full of herself and her narcissism and her nepotism, and feels that she deserves things just because she is this beautiful goddess, and for so many years it was just like, ooh, because of obvious things, you know what I'm saying, where I am embodying a fat body that this society does not reward and actually demonizes and vilifies in all, that's how the messaging is, or at least that's how the messaging is for me. Like thinness and beauty is rewarded in this life, in this society, and that's the things that when you see women getting picked, because it goes into so many things. It goes into that whole early years where women were basically sold off to husbands from their fathers for, like, here, I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you this dowry, and you marry my daughter and you take her off my hands because she's a financial burden, and this is what I'm going to give you. And then she becomes property. So it's this whole idea of that, right? And the way you did that, the way you get picked, was that you became this well-rounded woman. You learned this, you learned that, you learned how to either play piano, or you learned how to embroider. You learned all these different things that made you this desirable woman. You went to etiquette. You had the right upbringing. All these things that made you a pick me. If you watch Bridgerton, it's perfect. I love watching Bridgerton for that. So it's this whole thing, and the men thinking that, like, yeah, I have to have this woman who is everything that another man would want, and that is going to signal my success and my worthiness and my deservedness, because I came from the right upbringing and I am entitled to have a woman that looks this way and fits this mold. It has continued, it has persisted through the centuries. So this is where we still have this programmed in us. But this not the society we live in today, because women are doing things and achieving things for themselves. So it's no more this idea that a woman has to be picked by a man in order to have a comfortable life. Although there's NPCs in this world that are still playing that out, because it's still always perpetuating. But this idea that if you do all the right things, you will be rewarded. If you just work really, 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 really hard, you will be rewarded. That is not the case, because again, I'm talking about Nepo babies, models, wealthy people, people that have power. You look at the Elon Musks, the Jeff Bezos, you look at, Bill Ackman, all these different people. You look at the celebrities that are paid millions of dollars to act in a movie that they only worked at for like a couple of months. And they tell you this work is really, really hard. And the model tells you it's really, really hard work. And the Kardashians tell you it's really, really hard work. It's not. It's different work. It's different work. But it's, them being rewarded. So when you look at athletes, I can understand why athletes are paid what they're paid, because they have short careers. It is taxing on their bodies. So they have to get what they get those are the ones, when I look at it, those are the ones that earn it. They're the ones that earn it. And sometimes the fame follows because those athletes shine, and I get it. So what am I saying? Again, I've mentioned that I have lived adjacent to affluence my whole life, right? So I grew up in Yonkers. It's next to Scarsdale. The area of Yonkers I grew up in is next to Scarsdale. So you see those kind of kids. Then my mother bought her business, which was in Rye. Rye is another affluent town. And I saw that's where I really saw it, where I saw kids driving BMWs and cars and this and that. And they were given these cars that were just what you would deem for an adult who had achieved something, but now their parents were just giving it to them, and they were living in these beautiful homes, and they're given spending money, and they're given this and they're given that, and they have the best clothes. At the time back then, it was like Benetton and the Gap. Benetton was like it. Back in the early 80s, that was, or like the mid 80s, it was all about Benetton, and then it was about the Gap. Ooh, Ajita. Okay, so it was like all these things that they just were given all this stuff. It was just handed to them, and they didn't achieve anything yet. So they were already brought up in this idea of you deserve it. You deserve it because you're my child, and I'm going to give it to you, and you haven't earned any of it yet, but that's okay, because I have wealth, and you're an extension of me, and you're going to show the world what I have achieved. That you are just that extension of me, and you're just going to be my ambassador when you're out and about. You're going to have that car, those clothes, etc., whatever. And then, as we've gotten older, now you have this idea of the influencers. These influencers are acquiring massive amounts of riches by making videos here, right? For seemingly not working. They're not working. They're not toiling. They're not being a slave. So it's this idea. So anyway, what am I talking about? So there's been this resentment that I've held for a very long time, seeing these kids that are younger than me driving better cars than me, where I didn't have a car until I was 23, right? And then I bought a used 1984 Volkswagen Rabbit for $400, and that was a struggle, just so I could not have to walk in the snow to go to work. So right there, that was that, right? And just all these different things that I've seen and I've compared myself to. So it's this idea, they didn't deserve it. They didn't work for it. So they still got it. So this idea of meritocracy, and then you have these families that have just continued to hold on to wealth. Again, NPC families, right? Or entity families, whatever they are, entities or NPCs, right? They have you look at the political leaders, And you look at, like, again, actors, producers, and their children. It always, like, those opportunities are only handed out to them. They're only handed out to them. And it's not so much that I want fame or I want recognition. I want the lifestyle. I want that freedom. I want that freedom to be like, you know what? I have more money than I know what to do with. And if I want to go spend a week in California, I can do it. And I don't have to worry about being tied down to a job or tied down to watching somebody's dogs or working for wealthy people, you know what I'm saying? So it's been this whole thing. And I have had, and perfect, because this was more recent, again, my niece, my niece and my nephew and my brother's kids, because my sister-in-law's mother has worked hard. She has worked for a hospital in the city for decades. Like, she's been there for like 30 years. So she has a certain income. She has certain disposable income. I think she also has a lot of credit. So the things that I was working very hard for to buy myself, it might not even been like a full bottle of perfume. It might have been something like, I'm going to buy these little sample size perfumes of the perfumes I want for like $35, and I'm getting 6 of them, these really nice, expensive gourmand perfumes. And then, grandma's buying the same perfumes for this 12-year-old. That would burn my butt. It would burn my butt in all kinds of ways. It was like everything this kid saw me have, she wanted. Like, you got this? I want that too. And grandma would buy it for her. And that was pissing me off. That was pissing me off in a big way, because I was like, she doesn't deserve it. She doesn't deserve it. She doesn't appreciate it. And that's what it is. So it's like, I understand. But, like, I've spent a lot of money on that kid and my other niece when she was younger, and my nephew a little bit, and they just don't appreciate it. And it's like, no, like they squander it. They squander it, or